Hello and welcome to the first of our presentations of our case studies within Cleary Hall, where we take client matters, remove all the relevant identifying details, and present them to you in a way that hopefully can provide assistance in dealing with similar matters for your clients. The first of our series is going to be on dealing with an ATO or regulator review. In terms of dealing with any form of regulator, whether that's the ATO or OSR or professional body, the first three things that we need to do is that always carefully vet any questions from the regulator. In terms of that, we need to really sit down and make sure we're reading exactly what they're asking for and then providing only what they're asking for and no more. On that, a paper trail is always better in any sort of review. So if we can get any queries in writing, it's always better than a phone call or a face-to-face meeting where we can sometimes be caught unawares. In terms of face-to-face meetings as well, clearly we'd want to be asking for an agenda before we have them with any form of regulator and asking for a copy of any recordings that are made or file notes and confirming for later on that what is recorded by the regulator is actually what was said at the time. If we're providing information to any regulator, we want to have strict control on the release of that information. So we want to make sure that what we're releasing answers their queries and doesn't further expose any other potential areas for the client. So keeping those principles in mind, jumping to our case study, it is an ATO review of a client of Cleary Hall, and that commenced as a desktop review of a GST matter. The client had been quite successful, built up a lot of value and different entities within different businesses, and so had a number of client entities. Once that initial review commenced from the ATO, it very quickly widened, and they were looking at areas including Division 7A and Section 100A, as the client had some trust structures in place. He had a self-managed superannuation fund, so they're looking at a limited recourse borrowing arrangement and some gnarly issues. Trust distributions, generally, whether they're effective, having a look at interest deductibility and some debts, and also in terms of personal asset accumulation and how they have accumulated such personal wealth. Very quickly, once the ATO query widened, the accountant for the client realised that they needed to get some assistance and contacted us, and we started providing assistance to the client. Our involvement commenced with an initial meeting with the client where we had a look at the initial material requested from the ATO and an overview of the client's structure. On their instructions, it then went to a full-scale review of the client's affairs. No one's perfect, and in any review of any matter, you're going to identify areas that could have been done a little bit better or areas where there is some potential risk. And certainly in reviewing the client's affairs, we noted a couple of potential risk areas there where there were potential for issues if the ATO took an aggressive approach or took an opposite approach to what the client believed to be the case. So identifying those risk areas, we developed our plan to assist the client with the ATO review. So that plan implementation, we decided that the accountant was still going to be the point of contact. We were to stay very much in the background at this stage, with the view that the accountant already had a working relationship with the ATO officer, so no point upsetting that in terms of us suddenly getting involved. We were to review and vet all questions from the ATO and the material that was to be provided on the basis of our earlier principles, that we want to make sure we're answering the questions and material was to be provided that only answered those questions. From there, strict control of the information flow. So making sure that the right information went to the ATO, answering their queries, but we weren't disclosing other things that weren't necessarily required to disclose. On disclosure with this client, there were some matters that we took the view where we were required, or not required, but we decided to make disclosures of certain matters to the ATO on an upfront basis of areas of risk that we had identified. And we took that view obviously on the basis of that there are some things you can't just ignore, and it's better to get on the front foot with the ATO in some circumstances and show them that you're working with them. The end result, after some time, obviously these matters don't take a day or two in terms of the ATO response, was a clean bill of health from the ATO. So an excellent result from the client, from the ATO review, and he can move on with some certainty that in terms of the structures that he has, where we've identified some areas of risk, we've told them where appropriate it is how to fix those areas, and he can move forward with confidence moving forward in the future. So thank you for tuning in and listening to this. As I said, hopefully this will be the first of a series where we take a look at some recent interesting client case studies and present them to you in this short format so you can have a brief